This part of the process is very important. Now, as I explained about the joiners, the Pico points come automatically with a groove in the point, so the joiner slides underneath the sleeper. They're manufactured this way deliberately, so it's a very simple process of putting the joiners in, as you can see. Unfortunately, the Pico track doesn't come with a slot on the end of the track that when you join to a point. This technique, as far as I'm concerned, is very, very important. A lot of people don't know about it and don't do it. Using a sharp Stanley knife on a flat surface, you lay the Stanley knife into the track and very carefully work underneath the track to cutting off the little lugs that's on the end of the track that holds on the sleeper that holds the track in place. It's a little bit of fiddly, but it's a very important step. Now what that does, it allows you a clear space underneath that point of the track, so when you slide the joiners together, they slide simply straight underneath the sleeper, and there's no huge gaps in the sleeper bed, so it looks like you can very hardly tell where the track's been joined. You can see that this point now is a perfect join with the track. You have to do this on every application of each piece of track. Now, so when you cut a piece of track, when you've got the right length, you need to take away the two terminals on the end of the track sleeper. I will show you that as we go. We've now got to join, we've got to cut a piece of track between this point and this point. Now, because we've already utilised the knife on this end of the track, we can now put a joiner on here, as I show you. They're a little bit tricky sometimes, but okay. So we have the joiners on the track. We now then have to slide the two joiners together onto the track that this point is now fixed in place. And again, we have the issue with the little lugs on the joining section. So we have to trim them now. And when you've trimmed them, you can see with my finger, it moved the sleepers up in place. So now the track looks all exactly the same. Another little trick you can do to make sure that there's no gaps in these joints. These joints are critical. They have to be as tight as physically possible for two reasons. One, the train will run over them properly without derailing. It's also about electrical continuity. The smaller the gap or no gap, the better the electricity runs through your track. Back again. I'm going to try and show you the technique about cutting the lugs off the sleepers at the end of the track. I obviously didn't show this very well before. We're going to try it again. Simply run the Stanley knife holding the track underneath which takes the little lug off by itself. You can see that then when you've done that, you have a little piece of plastic that looks like that. Do the other side as well. When you've done it, you can see the Stanley knife then goes underneath the track between the sleeper and the track. That's what you're trying to achieve to allow the joiner to go in there. The next step is now marking the piece of track we need to cut in between the points. And as you see, I can move the point and lift the track underneath it, which allows me to then mark the cut position of the piece of track. You can use a permanent marker or a non-permanent marker. A little felt pen. Unfortunately, I have to put my glasses on for this. And you mark the track with a little black mark. Now, these marks you're putting on there is where you're cutting the piece of track. So once you've marked, you can fairly carefully slide that away and take the track off. Now, this is another very important part of making a model railway work and function properly. Cutting of the track. Under no circumstances do you use electrical side cutters or pliers. What I use is a grinder. Now, a lot of people won't be able to use this, but I've been using a grinder for 45 years. I'm fairly proficient with it. I will try and demonstrate the effect of what happens with a grinder with a fine cutting wheel on it. Now this part is a bit tricky and may take a little bit of practice. Very important. Now, it will also be very noisy, so earmuffs are important when you're using machinery. So I'll put my earmuffs on and I'll put my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. I'll try and demonstrate now. I use a piece of board here to cut on so I don't damage the table. Now this is a very fine metal cutting disc on my grinder which will cut all sorts of materials. Unfortunately you have to be very, very still to use this machine. So we'll bring this around again. I'll try and demonstrate how I cut the tiles. You saw how quick and easy that went through. It also cuts very straight if you're doing it properly. The beauty of the grinder is it doesn't damage the track. It also doesn't put a burr on the track. So that's a nearly perfect straight cut.